first meeting of the Ad hoc Committee on a Comprehensive Job Creation Plan, or as I prefer to call it, the Ad hoc Committee on Jobs, much easier. I'm Paul Krikorian, Chair of the committee, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Council President Wesson, Mr. Blumenfield, and Mr. Price, and we're ready to begin. Just briefly to introduce this, we are going to be meeting over the course of the next 6 to 8 months and covering a comprehensive review of both where we are now as a city, where we want to go as a city, and what steps does this city need to take to facilitate that journey of going from the status quo to the kind of economy we want to develop. We're going to be hearing from business. We're going to be hearing from other stakeholders. One of the things that we are going to try not to do is reinvent the wheel with lots of recommendations that have already been recommended many times. This committee is going to be about implementation. So we have lots of studies that are already sitting on shelves. We have lots of blue ribbon commissions that have been appointed to examine the business environment in Los Angeles. They've produced literally hundreds of recommendations that this council and the city can enact. We're going to be going through those, and we're going to be figuring out what works, what's the best place to invest our resources, and we are going to be a committee that takes action and makes recommendations to the council that will be impactful in improving our economy and creating the jobs that the people of Los Angeles will need for the next generation. So I'm excited about this task, and I want to thank Council President Wesson for creating this ad hoc committee and for giving me the responsibility of chairing it and for selecting such incredibly skilled colleagues to serve with me on this committee. This is, I think, the biggest priority that we have as a city, because everything else that we want to do depends on our ability to create jobs and to stimulate this economy. It's going to impact our ability to keep people safe and reduce crime. It's going to impact our ability to address the homelessness crisis that we face throughout Los Angeles. It's going to impact our ability to maintain a high quality of life for the people of the city of Los Angeles. And of course, it's going to impact on our budget as well. So in every way, the task before us is perhaps the most vitally important thing that the council will do in the coming years. So with that, before we go to public comment, I'd like to invite my colleagues to offer any introductory comments that they would like to make, and then we'll be ready to begin. Mr. Price, Mr. Blumenfield, Mr. Wesson, Mr. Blumenfield.
Sure. I just want to thank the Council President for putting me on this committee. I'm excited about digging in on trying to do what we can do to promote jobs, to promote our economy. I think a lot of job creation when it comes to government is not just about what can we as a government do to create jobs, because that's I think a limited paradigm because we're government, but what can we do to unlock the barriers to job creation that are out there in the community, because there are a lot of folks out there who want to figure out how to create jobs. What are the barriers that we can remove, or what are the incentives, or how can we facilitate that to happen? It's not just on our shoulders as city officials in terms of actually creating the jobs, but those bank shots, I think, are what's going to be more effective in terms of figuring out how we can facilitate it. And I'm excited about the prospect and looking forward to digging in. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wesson.
First of all, I just want to say that it's a pleasure for me. Well, that this is a very important task, and you laid all of that out. But I'm very excited to be part of this committee because of the experience. I expect to learn an awful lot. We have the chair of economic development who's very experienced, from a councilman to an assemblyman, senator. Then I look to my left, and Mr. Blumenfield is not chopped liver. He knows a little bit about budgets and money. He was the chair of a budget that was over $100 billion and change. And of course, to be at your right hand is an honor for me. So I'm excited, and I anticipate that we're going to do a good job. So with that said, I'm just going to kick back, and whatever you need me to do, Mr. Chairman, I am prepared to do.
Thank you very much. Mr. Price.
Thanks. I'm just excited to be with my colleagues and the community in this effort. We know there are lots of strategies, lots of tools, and we really have an exciting opportunity, I think, to identify the 3 or 4 or 5 that can really jumpstart and help to sustain things. So I'm excited about the job creation opportunities at all levels. I mean, we want to make sure that all communities are benefiting from the boom that we are enjoying, and that we want to expand. So I'm happy to join with others in the conversation, seeing how we make that happen. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Now, if anybody would like to offer public comment, either about the agenda items on today's agenda or general public comment about matters within the jurisdiction of this committee, please fill out one of these cards and bring it forward. Right now, I have 2 cards. Is there anyone else here who would like to fill out a card to speak? Please raise your hand. All right, okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and take general public comment first. I'd like to invite up Greg Akili, followed by Sherry Bell. Good morning.
Good morning, members of the committee and chair. First, I want to thank and acknowledge Council President Herb Wesson, my former boss, for your vision and your insight for creating this committee. Some people say that the economy is improving, and it may be, but you still need to have an emphasis on job creation, so we want to acknowledge you for that. The economy is not improving for black people, though. In many ways, in our communities, our employment rate has been double-digit for the past 16 years, and according to the last report from the Comptroller's Office, it was 17%, twice what it was for whites and 5% higher than Latinos. And those are figures, those are numbers. But if you live in the black community and you've been unemployed for over 3 years, it kills your spirit and breaks your heart, because you wind up having to make decisions between whether you're going to get gas or food. So what you are doing here will enlighten and hopefully help a lot of people. So BCCLA, and I'm here on behalf of the Black Community Clergy and Labor Alliance, an organization of organizations, and we are urging you to do a couple of things. First, to help eliminate the discrimination and stereotyping that is existing in California, and in LA in particular. Secondly, we want to call on you to invest in and support a diversity agenda that calls for a diversity of race and language. And we want to make sure that our work sites reflect the city. You can go to many construction and manufacturing sites and you won't see any black people, even though we know there are black people who are qualified and ready to work. So we stand ready to work with this committee to help you advance those issues and others, and we think that it is timely and necessary what you're doing today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Bell, before you speak, is there anyone else who wanted to offer public comment, general public comment? I have Mr. Gubler's card. Anyone who wants to speak on item number 1, number 2, or number 3? All right, then I'm going to close the acceptance of cards now, and we'll go to Ms. Bell.
Hello, good morning. My name is Sherry Bell with the LA Black Workers Center, and I also, too, want to congratulate this committee on taking a step in stimulating the economy in Los Angeles. I just want to also say that black workers in LA County, LA City can't afford business to go on as usual. 50% of black workers in this county are either unemployed or what you call underemployed, and only make up 2% of the construction industry. We would really appreciate if this committee would prioritize and take leadership in creating higher labor standards in new job creation and existing jobs, on prioritizing diversity, because we know that a lack of diversity leads way for exploitation and exclusion of workers. Our members will be back to tell you firsthand accounts on some of these barriers to accessing jobs, including nepotism and other hostile work environment situations. Our members are also armed with extensive training and certificates. However, they rarely see people who look like them on the job, but they're still hoping for the opportunity. Historically, if specific steps are not taken on the front end, the people who are most vulnerable systemically in this country and in this city, the issues will not cease. We can have the best wages, and we congratulate this city on improving that. However, if we do not address discrimination, it doesn't matter because certain people just won't get access to the wages. So we really urge and just recognize that LA has an opportunity to demonstrate that Black workers matter and that civil rights of workers should be upheld. And that pretty much is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your being here. Our next speaker is LaRon Gubler of the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce, and that will be our final speaker both for general public comment and for each of the agenda items today. Mr. Gubler.
Good morning,
welcome.
council members. LaRon Gubler, President and CEO of the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. I just want to offer our support for your efforts today and commend you for this effort to really look at the issue of job creations. Having worked in this city now for 35 years, first 12 years in San Pedro and now 23 years in Hollywood, I can tell you that over that span of time, there has been a lot of frustration from the business community at having to be reactionary rather than being proactive on job creation. I remember in San Pedro when we had to fight so hard just to retain Logicon, which was a major company back then that was being poached by Long Beach. And that seems over the course of the last 35 years to have been the standard rather than the exception. So I want to really commend you for your efforts to look at job creation and how we can be proactive on that. Just one thing, in Hollywood, right now we have 1 million square feet of office space under construction. There's another 1 million square feet in the pipeline. We have Netflix and Viacom coming back to Hollywood. Those are a lot of jobs, but a lot of the stuff that's in the pipeline right now is stalled because of the Hollywood Community Plan is not coming back. The plan we're operating under is 25 years old. We need the new community plan to come back to fix the problems with it so that these projects can be by right rather than having to seek exceptions and be subject to lawsuits. So thank you very much. We stand ready to help you any way we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gubler. And with that, public comment is closed. Members, about half of the people who live in Los Angeles work outside of the city of Los Angeles. So I think it's important as we look at jobs that we start with a 30,000 foot level, looking at the regional economy, what it is that's going on in Southern California in terms of industries that have the best opportunities for growth, and what the city can be doing to help facilitate that growth. And we're fortunate that the LA Economic Development Corporation has already done much of that work. And we have with us today Dr. Christine Cooper, the Senior Vice President of the LA County EDC, who's going to give us a presentation about where we are and where we are likely to be going in the Southern California region. So, Dr. Cooper, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me this morning. It's such an honor to be here on the inaugural convening of this committee. And this really is the major challenge of our time, is job creation and the change in the economy that's occurring that is hollowing out our economy and the jobs that we've always depended on. So I'm here to talk about three small things: people, industry, and jobs. Not very big issues, and where we are going. Thank you for recognizing a lot of the work that we've done. I've authored many of these reports myself. They do tend to sit on a shelf. They do inform people. Most of the work that we have done has been for the Los Angeles County and Los Angeles City Workforce Investment Boards as they try to find placement for their candidates. So I just wanted to speak shortly about, try to answer three questions. What industries are going to grow? What does this mean for the type of jobs that we will need? And is this the future that we want for Los Angeles? And I think you have a copy of the handout with you. The report, was asked to speak about two reports that we've done, the Industry and Labor Market Intelligence for the City of Los Angeles, which we've also done for the county, and our industry cluster preliminary report that we did a few years ago. They have since been updated, and so I provided you copies of our update report that was done in April of this year. It's a little bit of a shortened version. It does cover Los Angeles City and the county itself. So there's a lot of data in those reports, and I will leave them to you to read at your leisure. So I just want to start by looking at the unemployment rates in the city of LA compared to the county, compared to California, compared to the United States of America. And I've listed them in order from top to bottom. Top is not the winning position. This is the highest level of unemployment in the city of LA, has consistently been higher than the county average, than the state average, and than the US average. So these are questions that really disturb us. We're very concerned about the unemployment picture in the county of LA as well as in the city of LA. This is our general employment forecast. We entered a deep recession in 2007 and 8.
Actually, I'm sorry, before you move on from the unemployment rate slide,
Yes.
it does appear that the city of LA's unemployment rate and the counties and the states all more or less follow the national trends of the larger economy, and the major driver is the state of the national economy on our unemployment rate. But it also does appear that the big gap, the vector widens considerably with the economic collapse in 2008 in Los Angeles.
Right.
That's really when our unemployment rate became significantly higher. It also appears that those vectors are beginning to close and the gap is reducing now. Do you have a sense of why that is?
Well, I think our thinking is about the collapse really occurred in the financial and home residential construction market, and that really impacted us more than it might have other areas. Maybe we had a little bit less diversity in our industry mix to withstand that.
So because we are dependent so heavily on real estate finance, and other industries like that for our economic health,
Right.
the collapse of that very industry that led to the global economic collapse had a disproportionate effect on Los Angeles compared
Right.
to the rest of the country.
Right. And
So-
actually, if you look at the earlier periods as well, going back to the 1990s, again, we were very dependent on the aerospace industry. And if we look at what happened to employment in our region specifically, the cutbacks in the Defense Department, the peace dividend, which affected the entire nation positively, we paid for that pretty severely since that time period. So we're still, it has been a cost that we've borne here.
Yeah, I want to point that out because I think it seems safe to say that the unemployment rate since 2008 is more due to industry impacts than it is to Rick Perry's marketing, for example.
Oh, yes, we won't discuss the Texan miracle, actually.
Okay.
You're right. So our unemployment,
Yes, Mr. Price.
With that. And so how does this number 13%, how does that spike in densely populated minority communities where we know the rate sometimes is twice, sometimes three times? How does that number factor in?
well, this is an average of the entire city. So, of course, the city has many different characteristics across the region. So, of course, in certain areas of the city, these rates are going to be higher. In general, the data we look at is citywide or countywide.
Thank you.
And we can come back to that as well. And you will see as well in many of the reports that we do, we mention what the characteristics and determinants of that might be. Again, so we're growing now, finally. We have been growing. It's been very slow. We estimate 1.5% annual growth rate in employment. This is a little bit of a dated forecast, so it's about 6 months old. We'll be issuing our new employment forecast at the end of this month, which you are all encouraged to read. So we're expecting about 126,000 new jobs, net new jobs created in the city of LA over the next 5 years. We have recovered everything lost since the recession in 2015. So we're back to where we were, even though our population has grown. So you're right, committee chairman, that half of the residents of LA City work in LA City, but the other half don't. They work elsewhere. Then you can flip that around as well to say that half of the jobs in LA City are held by people that don't live in LA City. So we have a double concern. We have a concern about the residents of our communities and where they're working. And our job creation affects many other communities. So we have to understand that we're part of an integrated urban community and job market. So it's important to look regionally, and we do try to do that with other counties as well, given the commuting that occurs.
And members, on that point, I just, when I'm wearing my budget chair hat, it's very important to me that a business be on the LA side of the border compared to the Burbank side of the border, the Santa Monica side of the border, because that
Yes.
means revenues for our budget.
Yes.
But from an economic development standpoint, if our constituents are working in one of our neighboring cities and bringing their incomes home and spending it on their family in Los Angeles, those jobs are important to us as well. So
Yes.
that's why I think it's so critical that we take a regional look
Yes.
at this. Certainly the city of Los Angeles drives our region more than any other municipality. But it's of little benefit from a jobs creation and economic development analysis perspective to move jobs from a neighboring city into Los Angeles. Wouldn't that be true?
Well, again, you say it is from a budgetary point of view.
Yeah.
It does affect you, but from an economic development point of view, it does not. We do want to take a regional perspective because we are so interdependent, and we aren't islands. There aren't walls around our cities. We have to be together in the fight.
So when people advocate for the city of Los Angeles to make certain changes that will make us more competitive, policy changes that will make us more competitive with our surrounding cities, that may be a smart policy decision for us to make if it benefits our budget. But it really has no benefit in terms of our local economy. Wouldn't that be fair to say?
To some extent, but I would say that the city of Los Angeles has a great advantage because of its size and its role as a role model. So if there are policies enacted in the city of Los Angeles that can be adopted, that are competitive and that improve your quality of life or your economic development prospects, that will allow us to compete with regions outside. I think that's a different role
With other regions, yeah.
that you can have.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we did show what our employment prospects are going to be over the next few years. However, that depends on the industry mix. Industries grow at different rates. And so I have a picture of a dartboard. This is how I describe the economy. We start at 12 o'clock and go around. This is a very common ordering of our industry sectors. Starting at construction, going around to manufacturing, wholesale trade, retail trade, transportation and warehousing, information, so on, all around the dial. I've called out the top two wedges there in orange or light brown, because these are our goods producing sectors. Now, we have changed pretty much nationwide, especially in more developed economies, from being a goods producing society to being a service providing society. Which has really impacted us as we've lost manufacturing jobs, which used to be good middle-class jobs available to a wide range of educational attainment individuals providing for a middle-class lifestyle. But many of these jobs have left us, and now we are more of a service-providing economy, which is not necessarily bad unless the wages that are paid in the service sector are not equivalent to those that were lost in the manufacturing sector. So when I provide this picture of a pie chart showing where the jobs are actually located, it's important to realize where we are going. When I speak to WIB program directors, and they say, well, we need to place our candidates. We have clients coming into our workforce investment or workforce centers, and they're looking for work. And we'd love to place them in a manufacturing position. I said, you can take a dart and shoot it at that dartboard. Where are you going to find a job for your people? So this is as I say, it's a question for economic development professionals as well. This is the picture of LA City. LA County is a little bit different, a little bit less focused on government because, as you know, we're the center of many government agencies here in LA City, and there is a little bit more manufacturing occurring in other areas of Los Angeles County.
One of the industry sectors that people often talk about as a driver is tourism, which isn't delineated separately here. I assume that some tourism jobs are included within leisure and hospitality and some others in transportation. Is that why it's not separated out?
Well, I think tourism in general is considered to be in leisure and hospitality. That includes hotels and restaurants.
Okay.
There is some in transportation when you're talking about airfare or perhaps I don't know, cabs or sightseeing, transportation, that kind. But it's a very small portion of that.
Okay. Thank you.
So you can take that same notion in the same sectors and see how many jobs are going to be added over this time period. Some sectors are growing more quickly and they're very large. Some may be very small and growing quickly, and some may just be stagnating. So this is our description of the number of jobs by industry sector that we expect to be added to LA City over the next 5 years. And you can see that the bars are the number of jobs. The largest one that we see there is education and health services, 41,000 jobs. Now, most of this is really health services, not education. But health services, of course, includes not only pharmacists and doctors and nurses, but a large proportion of this is social assistance jobs in home care for elderly and disabled, which is a very necessary function, but is not a well-paid occupation. The second one is professional and business services, also a very large sector in our society. Architectural engineers, lawyers, accountants, and that type of thing. Also administrative support, custodial work, and temporary agencies. So this gives you an idea on all. The third I would mention is leisure and hospitality, which is mostly restaurants, food services. I think we're seeing a big change in the way modern life actually occurs. We're all going out to dinner a lot more, so I know I don't cook very often for my family, so we're always going out. So there's a great growth in that sector as well. So just as a summary, 126,000 jobs are going to be added over the next 5 years. There will be some replacement candidates that are needed for people leaving the workforce. And approximately half of these jobs are going to be middle skills, so they'll require perhaps a high school education or some certification post-secondary. Well, let's talk about what kind of jobs these are. So I've already mentioned some of them.
I'm sorry to keep interrupting you, but on where the jobs will be, I'm just trying to understand these numbers. So we're going to be adding just on the natural, just from industry development, you anticipate will be growing 126,000 new jobs. I don't understand the 144,000 job openings that will be needed to replace workers who leave a job.
Leave your retirement or choosing to drop out of the labor force.
So doesn't their leaving the labor force create job openings for others to fill?
126,000 is from net new jobs from industry growth.
Right.
144,000 is churning.
Okay.
So when we're looking at it from a workforce development point of view, we want to be able to have candidates that are able to fill both of those. So 144 is part of a flow that is a plus and a minus, where the 126 is a net new.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so what kind of openings are these going to be? Office administrative positions, food preparation, serving, sales, retail sales, and professional sales, healthcare, and transportation and material movers. These are the top 5 occupational categories. Half of all workers in the city of LA are in these occupations. Half. And this is just a breakdown of the number of people working in these occupations. This is the LA County, but the LA City numbers are similar. But I wanted to point out to you the wage ranges of these occupations. Again, this is the same occupations, but now we're reading from left to right. These are median wages. The little orange triangles are showing you what the median wages is for these occupational groups. Again, the top 5, the 5 leftmost occupations are held by 50% of working people, and those are among the lowest wages. And here are the entry-level requirements for these jobs. So a third of them will not even require high school education. A third of them, approximately 30%, will require high school education but no experience. So quite a lot of jobs that are opening up don't really need very much. They just need people to show up for work every day on time and be prepared to work. Now, I'm just providing you data. For us, when we look at this, we're a little concerned because we don't think this is going to be helpful for building a prosperous future. We don't think so because there's a high correlation between wages and educational attainment. And that's what this picture shows you, starting left to right, increasing levels of education. So these are median wages in LA County for workers currently working with less than high school diploma. Median wage is $17,000 per year. With a professional or graduate degree is $71,000 per year. That similar correlation is found between unemployment rates and poverty rates and educational attainment. And this is why in neighborhoods where there is high unemployment or low educational attainment, we see high poverty. So clearly, we believe we need a better strategy. The LA County Economic Development Corporation has been working on an economic development strategy for LA County. In 2009, we developed it with a number of different stakeholders in the region. It was endorsed by all cities and by the Board of Supervisors. This year, we have been developing a new plan for the next stage, which is an implementation strategy. And this strategy is going to be based on a cluster approach. So I'm just going to spend a few moments talking about industries and how industries grow. So we separate these into two different types of industries. One we call local serving. Well, local serving industries are like grocery stores, retail outlets, food, dry cleaners, everything that serves a local population. These industries are going to grow at the rate of population growth. We're always going to need a place to live, a place to eat, and we're going to need a grocery store. However, other industries that are competitive and can find markets outside the region, they have the potential to be high growth industries. In addition, industries that are innovative and find brand new markets can be high growth industries. So these are the industries that we would like to encourage. If we have an innovation that we alone here have in LA, we can sell to areas outside of Los Angeles and bring new dollars in. We call them traded industries, and why do we favor them? Because they do tend to be competitive and innovative, because they sell to outside markets and bring new dollars home, which then recirculates, and because they generally pay higher wages. So what do we know about Los Angeles? These are our competitive industries. Entertainment is our number one. We have a specialty. We should build on that specialty and protect it. Aerospace. We have always had an aerospace industry for 150 years. Why not? Keep it here. It's a very important industry and very high contributor to our economy. Biomedical and pharmaceuticals industry. This is another high priority for us. Marketing, design, publishing. This is internet. This is our new software industry. International trade. We're the home of the two largest ports in the nation. Education and knowledge creation. We have the best research universities here. And fashion. And we can't leave fashion out. We're very competitive there. It's one of our own very competitive industries. So the three questions: what industries are going to grow? Well, we know construction is going to grow eventually. We have children at home that need houses. I need to get them out of the basement. So I hope that they will buy a house. Professional and business services, we know that's going to grow. Health services, leisure and hospitality, these will grow. What does that mean for the type of jobs that we have? Well, many are lower paid and require less educational attainment and skills. So I will leave it for you to answer, is this the future we want for Los Angeles? Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your report, Dr. Cooper. It's a great summary to start this discussion, and I'm very much looking forward to also hearing when it's ready to be heard, the report on the strategic plan for economic development for the county, because certainly
That should be done
our,
at the end of this year, and it'll be released in 2016.
our work will be dovetailing with that
Yep.
very closely, I'm sure. I'm sure members are going to have questions. I do just want to touch on this cluster issue for a moment. The local serving industries will be growing. They are pretty much tied to where the people are,
Yes.
right? So those are going to tend to not move because they need to be where their customers are.
Yes.
The natural resources-based industries, likewise, are going to be where the natural resources are that they're exploiting. They are not going to move. The oil industry is not going to move out of Southern California because there's oil here, for example. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes.
Okay. So you've emphasized the need to focus on the traded industries. Would it be fair to say that since traded industries have greater mobility and they have greater return, that our policy focus, if we are going to focus on an area where we want to impact siting decisions by an industry, whether they locate in Los Angeles, Southern California, or Texas, or Oklahoma, or wherever, that's where we should be focusing our attention on policies that are specific to those traded industries. Would you agree with that approach?
Yes, absolutely. That is exactly the threat. These are traded industries. They sell everywhere and anywhere. They are not dependent on the local economy. So their decisions to be in a particular location depend on a number of different things, including having access to skilled workforce, transportation corridors, perhaps being close to markets, but there are other factors involved than rather just selling to the local population. So you're absolutely right, that is critical, and that's why competitiveness in a policy picture is so important.
Very good. Members, questions? Mr. Price.
Thank you, Doctor. We certainly want to encourage wages, increase wages, encourage greater education. That's an important component of our economic development, community economic development. But your next to last slide, you suggest that many are going to be lower paid jobs. Some percentage of the jobs that are going to be created are going to be lower paid and requiring less and less. So what, 10%, 20%, 40%? What kinds of jobs, how much percentage of jobs are you talking about?
50%.
50?
50.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, so, I don't want to paint a dismal picture. I want to provide, this is not uncommon, I will say. This is a national problem. It may be highlighted here because of the makeup of our industries, that 50% will be lower paid. That's the reality.
What's the percentage now?
50%.
Oh.
So, when we think about this, the traded industries that we want to focus on, these higher paying jobs, are bringing money in and are circulating the money around the economy that are supporting these other lower paid jobs. So this is why our focus is on increasing economic growth that is coming from the outside and recirculating here, in addition to investing in human capital to bring people's skills up.
Thank you.
And if I may, just as a follow-up on that, if 50% of the job growth is going to be the lower paid positions, they also provide lower entry-level requirements
They
to
do,
access
absolutely.
those jobs.
Yes, that's
And
true.
how does that compare to the demographics of our workforce in Southern California?
Actually, if you look at the demographics for the educational attainment, that matches up almost perfectly with the required for entry-level positions.
So if that proportion were to shift and say 80% of the new jobs required a college education, that would produce a significant increase in the amount of unemployment among those who have less education.
I don't believe that's necessarily true. If the jobs that were created here, as has happened in Northern California, require higher levels of education, we will import labor and bring in additional funding for that labor and grow the pie. So it's not necessary, we don't have to, it won't necessarily, those households will spend additional funds in the economy and provide jobs for others. So
Okay.
we're not a fixed pie of people here.
Okay. Mr. Wesson.
Yeah, I want to thank you for the presentation today, and I loved the line about getting the young ones out of the basement. I don't know if you meant to be funny, but it was hilarious to
It's
me.
not funny. It's not funny when you have two of them living in your basement.
Trust me, I've been there. Them and some cats. Okay, but two things. You referenced when we were talking about the competitive industry clusters that it was important that we keep them. So I'd like to hear, are there strategies to do that and actual strategies that would help us increase the number of traded industries that we have?
So that's interesting. At the municipal level, the idea of maintaining industries within your borders that are traded and competitive is all about business friendliness and how difficult it is for them to do business here. At a larger level, and I can just speak to the entertainment industry, as you know, California was losing a lot of entertainment and production days going out of the state. And their response was to implement a tax credit program, which has been very successful in bringing back production and in demonstrating that we're not prepared to lose this industry and the jobs that go with it. And other states are deciding they don't want to be competitive anymore. So that is one policy at a higher level that will retain those. And the idea about increasing the number of traded industries that you have, I mean, this is like it's a holistic picture. So you want to encourage all businesses. You want to have all businesses be able to compete and do well within your community to provide jobs for the residents. So I think a general environment of business assistance would be helpful in that regard.
Mr. Blumenfield.
Thanks. When you talk about trying to keep these businesses here in a better business environment, one of the things I've always been struck, though, is it's not just about that, it's about quality of life. If you're going to attract businesses, and I wanted to get your comments on this, one of the reasons that we lose these traded industries is because of quality of life. If our streets aren't paved well, if our schools aren't good, people move, and they move industries in large measure because they want to have a place where their kids can go to school and they can feel like it's a good quality of life. How much of that is a consideration versus just strictly, dollars and cents on business incentives?
Oh, I think quality of life is critical, and you would know that if you were in Santa Monica, where the industry is just booming because people love to be there. Now, I don't think Santa Monica, don't cast aspersions, but I don't believe it is known as being particularly business friendly. However, everybody wants to be there, and so they are there. I mean, that's really one of the advantages that we have in Los Angeles in general. We have everything from a climate and geographic diversity and a lovely place to be. Now, we do have some challenges, including high housing costs and congestion, which are negatives. But for many people, the positives outweigh the negatives. So you're absolutely right. We have to consider that as well, which is why that is one of our goals in the strategic plan.
Right. I guess it's one of those tensions, and I'm, I was a big supporter of the Hollywood tax credit and certain other incentives that we can do, but it does, I think, something that this committee we have to think about. There is that inherent tension because every dollar we put toward an incentive or something to bring a business is a dollar we're taking away potentially from quality of life. Yeah. From our streets or from something else. Obviously, the goal is to grow the pie, and that creates more money for all of these things. but it is a tension that we have to deal with in making these policies.
Yes, you're absolutely right. We do. Unfortunately, we live in a world of limited resources and many needs.
I wanted to ask you a question about the sort of a narrow question. You were talking about the character of the jobs of folks within the city of LA.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that distinguishes the people who, in terms of the jobs of the people who work in LA, who live in LA but work elsewhere, versus the people who live and work in LA?
Oh, I actually don't have that data handy. I'm sure there are differences because LA has many different characteristics, but at the same time, the city of LA is very diverse. You include a financial center downtown, which is very high rent, or you have areas in the southern part of the city which are more industrial and have a different characteristic. So it's very difficult to make broad conclusions like that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, members? Dr. Cooper, thank you very much.
Thank you so
I really
much.
appreciate this report. And we are going to hear next from the the Greater Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce, and our speaker will be Ruben Gonzalez, the Senior Vice President for Public Policy and Political Affairs. Mr. Gonzalez, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Well, we're talking about the entertainment industry, and my favorite part of the movies is actually the trailers at the beginning, preview of coming attractions. So this is a bit of a preview of coming attractions. On October 7th, we will be having our annual Access City Hall event, where we come and share a great deal of information with the City Council. And at that time, as we have for the past 4 or 5 years, we'll be presenting our City Council District Jobs Report. And we call it the Jobs Report because that was the impetus when it was first created. Now it has many more pieces of demographic and performance information in it. So many of the more specific questions that Councilman Blumenfeld and others on the committee had, likely some of that illustration will be in that report. And of course, Chris Thornburg with Beacon Economics will be here to present it along with myself, Gary Tobin, and our chair from Kaiser Permanente, Bill Caswell. So this is the coming attractions will be in a few weeks. However, when this committee was created, there was a great deal of excitement with our membership. We are the largest business association covering the entire county, and when this committee was created, we heard from our membership immediately. They were excited at the opportunity to have focus on an issue that they feel that is their focus each and every day. So I wanted to share with you, at least in the beginning of this discussion, because this is going to be an ongoing discussion for months to come, some of the things that we heard from our membership and from the businesses in the city of LA and in the region who are employing residents of the city. First of all, you can't manage what you don't measure. And so along with the jobs report, as we go further down the road, there needs to be a look not just at the past reports that have been done, but at metrics and analytics that apply to now. Where are the industry clusters that Dr. Cooper so eloquently discussed? Where are their impacts? How many of their employees are in the city and outside the city? Of the employees that don't, residents of LA that work in the city, where are they working throughout the rest of the region? Let's get the baseline understanding of what we're really talking about here before we start pushing remedies on top. Because too much of the time we have the conclusions in search of rationales where we kind of think this sounds like what we should do, and then we try to force it onto potentially not what the problem really is. And then that management and measuring needs to live beyond this current process. As we go forward, this committee and this council, along with the mayor, can decide on a way forward and some strategies. But the reality is that if you decide on 10 strategies, 3, 4, 5 years from now, we can discover that half of them aren't as effective as we thought. And so we need to make sure those metrics, those analytics, and those measures continue to be in place so that we can not let these become sacred cows, and we can say, okay, we gave that a try. Let's keep moving. Franklin Delano Roosevelt said that government is a constant, unceasing process of experimentation, and we need to have that kind of perspective as we move forward on such a dynamic issue as job creation. The other thing we heard from our business sectors, and I think you would understand this more than anyone as council members, is we can't have cookie-cutter solutions. There are solutions that will be and should be citywide. I could talk about tax policy and other issues like that, and we'll get further into those as this discussion follows over the next year. But look at the districts, and as we have the measurements I was talking about earlier, what is the industry that live there and how can we help them grow? What are the industries that make sense to live in that council district or that community, and how can we make them grow? And if we're looking at a district that takes a disproportionate amount of those 50% of those low-wage service jobs, how do we bring other industry into that area to create a greater mix? But also, how do we protect those low-wage service jobs, because we don't want to lose those either, because a job is a commodity, whether it's paying you the top of the scale or the bottom of the scale. We all want the top of the scale. We all want low-wage jobs to be short-term jobs, not long-term jobs that folks have to be in forever and raise their family on. But we still need to have that sector in our patchwork of our economy. And we need to be mindful of that, because those low-wage jobs are in sectors with low profit margins. And so when you take an action, create a regulation, make a change, you really have to sit down and put on the perspective as council members as if you were the businessman in charge of that business. And at the end of the day, if my profit margin is X, how am I going to absorb a cost within it? Because business owners as a whole don't have any social agenda other than to create jobs and be successful and create economic activity. That's why they started their business. That's why they took it over. And so in the end, if you say, we want to have this for society's good happen in the city of Los Angeles, they're not going to say no. They're going to say, okay, how do I do it? Help me do it. If you have a developer and you want him to have a car share program in his new real estate development, then make sure it pencils out on the other end because he has a little more density or a lower parking requirement. Business owners don't come from a place of no, because they wouldn't be entrepreneurs if they did. They come from a place of yes, but it has to be within reason and reality. So as partners, we can get down that road, but it needs to have that perspective. There's the apocryphal story of the very liberal California assembly person who stood up on the floor one time and said, I don't understand why people think I'm unfriendly to business. I have the greatest faith in business. I believe that no matter how much we tax and regulate them, they'll still find a way to turn a profit. Now, it's a funny story, but in the end, sometimes our membership feels like that's really the perspective. Because, okay, you'll make it work. And we need to get to a point of view, and I hope it's part of the perspective of this committee, that we need to make it work, and we're going to find the ways that we make it work.
Ruben?
Yes?
You need to stop talking about Tourette's.
Actually, I wasn't. So the other perspective is what's critical are the industry clusters that Dr. Cooper spoke about. These are the economic drivers that we have. And it's not just because they're great industries that have high-paying jobs, but it's because they're the pebble in the pond. A very stark reality of this is the movie industry, and why the Chamber and the rest of the business community were so adamant about pushing for what Councilman Corian helped start, the tax credit statewide. Because when you have an industry like these, like entertainment, like goods movement and trade, like technology, health, technology, and the other clusters that were listed, they create that initial job and they create that initial activity. But because it's created, it feeds financial services, it feeds those hospitality and service industry, it feeds transportation, it feeds all of those other offshoots that create even more activity, and it becomes those ripples that go out farther than we can necessarily count unless we really get into the numbers. So that's why those are key, and that's why we would offer that although we need to look across the city, we need to look focused on geography, what makes sense. We have to look at those clusters as our cornerstones. They're the pistons in our economic engine, and we have to make sure that they're staying home and that they're growing. And we need to take a perspective of shared sacrifice. Much of the time when dealing with in the policy field, representing business, I hear, well, that's a good idea, but this stakeholder won't like that, or that stakeholder won't like it, or that, so we can't. To some extent, we've had a perspective of shared sacrifice with business. You know, we believe that we need to pass this policy for the good of the city. So business, you need to change. You need to change how you operate. You need to change your financial structure. And sometimes we're taken along kicking and screaming, but you know, again, we come from a place of yes, and we try to make it work. There needs to be some element of, okay, neighborhoods, okay, labor, okay, environmental community, okay, other stakeholders. We're all in this as a team. And so don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. If taking action X is going to create more jobs that benefits all of us and gives us a greater economy, raises quality of life, then maybe you're not going to get exactly what you want in that situation. That needs to be part of the conversation as well. Now, we also need to have a short, mid, and long-term view. My hope for short, mid, and long-term is that this committee does not stop its work after 8 months or a year or however long it takes to create the initial strategy. Our hope would be that this committee or some creation like it is there always to be the protector of jobs, so that when a policy motion comes forward, that's not a bad idea or not a good goal, but will have repercussions in the economy and job creation, that it's not just looked at by the budget committee to see if it impacts the city budget, and it's not just looked at in the environmental community to see if it has impact on the environment, but that there is a single committee that looks at general policies that are introduced in motions in this council that says, wait a minute, okay, we know the impacts in other sectors, but what is the impact going to be on the jobs? And what is the impact going to be on the business community that's creating the jobs? Are we making it easier or harder to grow our economy and grow our industry? If this committee or whatever comes after it can be the arbiter of that, I think it'll be an important voice that adds to that final discussion when you come together as 15 around the horseshoe and decide a final policy. And maybe we can still get to whatever that great goal is, but we get to it in a way that isn't as negatively impactful as it might be. That's a voice we feel has been missing too often. Again, so that would be overall short-term regulatory review. We would look as very quickly, and we're happy to work with you on this, what are the low-hanging fruit that hopefully we can change in policy, procedure, and even protocol that makes it easier for a business to get from A to Z to finish a project, to get the doors open, to continue moving, to expand, to build. Because in the end, the old adage, time is money, is key. And if you're helping that business owner make their P&L work, it's not only about bringing down their costs directly, it's about bringing down the time it takes to do anything, because that will help balance that out. And it's all about balance in the end. Now, long-term, and Dr. Cooper was very, very eloquent on this as well, it's about education and workforce development. We hear time and time again from our industries and our members that we don't know where we're going to get the next generation's engineers. And it's not even just on that level. I mean, if you look at the PSEP program, this pipeline safety program that utilities across the state are now having to spend billions and billions of dollars over the next decade to make sure that San Bruno doesn't happen again, to replace pipe and test it and make sure it's fine. That's going to take an unbelievable amount of construction employees and skilled ones, welders. Right now, we can't find enough welders to do this. And so it's not just the engineering jobs. It's jobs like welding, where someone can make 6 figures a year and have a great quality of life. We have to be looking past tomorrow to what are all the other items coming in that will give us the opportunity to create these jobs. we work, and we know this, at the LA Area Chamber of Commerce, we have about 55 staff members. 30 of them work on nothing but educational workforce development programs or policies, because we know that is, we can't survive if we're not creating that next generation. And we're behind in LA, and we all know we're behind in LA. And Councilwoman Perry and her staff do a wonderful job, and they're partners with us in these efforts. But we all need a greater focus, and that's the long-term view on creating jobs. Because once we build these industries where we'll have engineers, and people creating movies technically, and our tech sector, and all of these skilled job areas, and construction, building smartly in the right way, we're gonna need the folks locally to fill those positions. And so that's gotta be the long-term view as well. And so I would close with our last recommendation being that this be, first and foremost, before action, a listening endeavor. And we have experts in these industry clusters. We have experts in the industries where 50% of folks are going to work, in low-skilled workers, in restaurants and hospitality and retail. Bring them in, or we'll bring them together and pull that information together for you. We are happy to create focus groups and be a partner and help with the infrastructure for this committee to bring in the leaders in those industries to say, and Councilman Blumenfeld said earlier, and I would repeat him or paraphrase him, what can the city do to help you be more successful proactively? And frankly, what can we stop doing to no longer be in the way of you being successful? And if we can ask them what those two answers are, then half the work of this committee is done. And the other half will just be making sure we make some of those changes so we grow the pie, and then everybody benefits. So I'll close on that. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Gonzalez. Very well presented, and I can absolutely guarantee that much of the work of what this committee will be doing will be listening, and we will be reaching out, and we will be hearing from you and your colleagues at the Chamber and other business representatives at length, because I have no interest in producing another report that says some general bromides about the business friendliness of Los Angeles. And the only way we get past that and get down to the business, and you mentioned regulatory review and a few other really critical elements that we keep talking about and not acting on, the only way we get past the talk is to really get down to the very specific granular level about what this particular industry needs in this particular area, and then we start delivering that. And that's what I hope will be the outcome of our work. We can't get to that point until we do the exact kind of listening that you just described. And I couldn't agree with you more about measurability, about reviewing the jobs impact of our broader range of policies, and workforce development. And Mr. Price, I think, hit on a really important point with Dr. Cooper about the demographics and where those jobs are. And we do I think, a very good job in this city at the highest end of educational attainment, because we have some of the finest universities in the world. We're surrounded by them, and we have industries that are dependent upon them, but we do a pretty lousy job of bringing the lower level educational attainment folks up to the mid-level and giving them the opportunity to succeed in good middle-class jobs through, career training. And we haven't done nearly enough of that. We need to do a lot more. So thank you for highlighting that point and for the commitment that the Chamber has made to workforce development as well. Members, questions? No? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your being here, and we're looking forward to the report next week. Okay, and your continuing engagement with this committee as well. Thank you very much. All right, members, that brings us now to item number 3, which is actually the motion that Mr. Wesson brought to sort of initiate our action here. And in the context of that motion, I'd like to invite up first the General Manager of Workforce and Economic Development, Jan Perry, who's here with us, and I'd like to invite her to come to the front table. Ms. Perry, welcome.
Thank Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also have our Executive Director from the Workforce Investment Board here, Greg Irish, and a representative of our workforce side if you wish or if you have questions on our very extensive programs for workforce development. That's Greg Irish and Jaime Pacheco. They're coming up right now.
They're coming up. Very good.
Okay. You guys want to come up? Come sit over here.
Welcome.
Thank you. So just to summarize, and I'll just hit the high points, and then if you have questions, and Greg and Jaime can speak very briefly. March 27, 2015, the department transmitted a citywide economic development plan or update describing the recommendations of 2 previous reports and asking that those recommendations be adopted. They were reports that referenced funding levels, staffing authorities, and how the department proposed to bring economic development efforts to scale for the city of Los Angeles. They also offered a very rich analysis of the city's economic indicators, current trends, structural constraints, and concluded that private investment was absolutely necessary to increase productivity, to raise living standards, and to develop higher wage jobs. Our work plan, based on those reports, focused on market investments in small businesses and micro enterprises, innovation by supporting emerging markets and creating traction for new business models and ideas, propelling growth sectors to move into and to pull from disadvantaged communities, and to capitalize on a culture of diversity and neighborhood development to achieve economic revitalization and resilience, and to create a platform for transformation through infrastructure projects that focus on entire commercial districts or sectors. We believe it was a very pragmatic plan, or it is a pragmatic plan, because it focuses on some 5 key categories: market investment, that we provide technical support and capital investment to focus on business creation; innovation to accelerate businesses in emerging sectors and creative economies; capital projects to assist in creating physical infrastructure, facilities, and amenities with a focus on public-private ventures that would positively impact the city's tax base and quality of life; economic strategy, research and tracking of economic data and trends for program development and policy making; sector-specific targeted marketing and programs; and of course support of business districts where they are, and to create more where there are not. And then of course property development, maximizing the value of those assets that we have under our control for the public benefit. And so we, since 2013, have undertaken to move that agenda forward. We do have a pre-existing portfolio of projects that we are continuing to work on, but we will continue to look for and develop strategies for creative financing that would include developing recommendations for CDBG funds allocated for the Economic Development Fund, doubling small business loan investments, and spending the Economic Development Fund on innovative projects. And applying for project-specific and planning grants, and of course to work collaboratively with the legislative body and the Office of the Mayor. And so we just submit that for your consideration. The reports are already on the record, and obviously we don't want to generate something that's going to sit on a shelf. So we want to be very pragmatic, on point, and forward-thinking. If you would take a second just to let Mr. Irish speak and Mr. Pacheco speak about the workforce side, because I think it's highly impactful. The numbers that we have to date are very, very strong and continue to grow. We have a network of 17 work source centers, 16 youth source centers, 9 business source centers, and we are about to put them out to bid again. So we have a very strong network citywide to be able to further ideas, to solicit input, and to create a delivery system to people in areas where they need it the most.
Great, and I would like to do that, and I would like to do that now, but I would also like to do that at much greater length in future hearings, because this is going to be a critical issue that we're going to be focusing on a lot. And I know that Mr. Price and Mr. Blumenfield both have another committee that they need to get to shortly. So why don't we do the 30,000-foot level of that if we could, Mr. Irish, and then members, I'll get you out of here in just a few moments if that's okay.
Sure. Mr. Chair, Greg Irish, the Executive Director of the Workforce Investment Board. As you know, you have to have a Workforce Investment Board in order to receive public funds from the federal government for workforce development. The board shares in the responsibilities according to federal legislation with both the council and the mayor for the use of those funds. And all three of us have, three entities have oversight in terms of the department at the use of those funds. I'm joined by Jaime Pacheco, who also works for the department. Maybe we can tag team on this, but he has a document in front of him, which is the annual plan. We present it to you every year, contains $65 million of workforce development expenditures. We do coordinate with LAEDC in terms of the economic data that we use to devise that plan. We have focused on sectors. We're hoping to train people so that they can basically have jobs in demand within those sectors. We have the challenges of folks who, quite frankly, we're in triage, because when they come to us and when you talk about economic development, job growth and creating jobs, you're going to have to jump into the fray of education. Because when folks come to us, we're pretty much dealing with education remediation. That's an issue. But that is the plan that we give you every year for how we respond to what's happening in the economy. It's more of a plan in terms of getting people prepared for jobs. It doesn't necessarily create the jobs, although the department does have a separate plan to deal with that. Jaime, do you want to add anything to it?
Well, I think that one of the things, I'm Pacheco Orozco with the Economic and Workforce Development Department. I think one of the things to keep in mind, and Greg alluded to this, is that we do have an educational issue here in the city of and county of Los Angeles. 25% of the working adults lack a high school degree, and that's a reality. So when Dr. Cooper was speaking about the educational levels, we need to be mindful that the population we're working with is highly impacted. The plan itself focuses almost exclusively on those marginalized and vulnerable populations, because it is critical to move folks up into career pathways.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Mr. Price.
Thanks for your work and for the commitment. I know it's not a simple task, but collectively I think you all have what it takes. The question, we heard the county suggest there was a 13% blended unemployment rate. Just kind of wondering what our working numbers are here in the city.
Yeah, I can give that to you. And we only have stats as of August. We get those stats every month. The U.S. unemployment rate is 5.1% as of August. The California unemployment rate is 6.1%. That's 1.1 million people out of work in California. The city of LA's unemployment rate is 7.4%. That's 148,000 people out of work currently, 148,700. I can compare that in terms of California last year, 5.1% now. Last year it was 6.2%, so the California rate has gone down. The national rate has gone down to 5%. LA City's rate as of July was 8%. In August of 14, it was 9.1%. So we've come down in terms of unemployment, but I want to caution you, the actual labor participation rate is fairly abysmal. This is the way we do measure unemployment. We do it by a survey. Federal government surveys, the state surveys, it's a small sample size. Actually, it reflects numbers coming down. We've always used it this way, but I would surmise that unemployment is probably higher and is probably particularly higher in certain communities in South LA, East LA, et cetera.
But no idea what that higher number is?
They don't
in South
track
LA?
that, but we can come up with some compilation if you need it in the future.
Well,
I'll be
we
prepared to
start
work.
working on it. Do we
Well,
double it? Do we
among
assume?
among African Americans, unemployment, some of the estimates are between 14 and 17%. That's just one significant group. It's equally as abysmal in terms of Latinos, et cetera.
All right. The workforce center contracts was exciting new development. I think another expanded way of providing expanded services. Any quick reviews of? I guess it's been about 6 months since they've been out there now. Correct? Any real differences?
We've actually been in place. We just completed a year of the new design.
Okay.
I don't know.
Could you comment on that? How it's?
We just completed a year of the new design. We were going to serve, I think we were talking about 45,000 people. It does go to the WIB, the performance metrics this month. We will then present it to you in terms of who was served. As you know, we have federal performance metrics and state performance metrics. We have a system where we have to enter people into that system, so we can't fudge the numbers. But the basic performance criteria is how many people get jobs, at what wages, and how long they stay on the job. That's what we'll be able to present to you probably next month.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Blumenfield?
Thinking about it, it's interesting that everyone so far has talked about education as being one of the prime components to workforce development and to creating jobs. And I'm hearing you say the same thing, that that's the biggest factor. And it's in terms of the chicken and egg concept. If we put all resources into better educating folks, would that create the jobs, or is it the reverse?
I think we have to make these efforts simultaneously. Many of the grants that we have in the department focus on retrieving or resuscitating or going into disadvantaged communities and pulling people out and pulling them back into the educational system. We also have to focus on the incumbent worker or the person who's been working, an older person who may have lost their job and needs to be re-educated for another kind of job. We have an extensive network of youth source centers, and the youth source centers are a precursor to integrating the services, soft skills, academic skills. It's a framework to create a platform for our public-private partnerships to focus on young people, to keep them in school, to keep them focused, to provide wraparound services for them. So I don't think one comes before the other. Short answer, one doesn't. My opinion is, and they may have different opinions, I think you have to do them all simultaneously.
We defined economic development, workforce development as economic development. It's not just education, and I think Mr. Gonzalez dealt with it. It's criminal justice reform. It's immigration, particularly for this Southern California and California. It's transportation, because Metro can no longer just think about moving people back and forth. It must use transit-oriented development to deal with things. These are the things that we should, so it's not going to require a cookie-cutter approach. It's going to be a multidisciplinary approach that we've never taken before, and I think that's what the general manager is talking about.
Yeah, basically, we will continue to provide you with a framework, a platform, a plan, steps, conceptual, and then implementation strategy with budget associated with that, and then you can pick and choose from whatever it is you want, depending on whether you feel it's citywide, regional, whatever, to apply, and we can move forward.
Great, no, and I appreciate all the good work that you've been doing, and part of it is budget. More would be better, because we could get more done that way.
Well, leverage is a good tool too.
Yeah.
More is not necessarily a guarantee that it'll be better.
And then maybe looking backwards, has there been anything in the past that we haven't been doing right that we need to change in terms of our workforce development and creation of jobs?
I think that each one of you, everybody in the city, can be an ambassador to the private sector and to say, push people. You're looking for someone, push them to our work source center. We have 17 throughout the city. There's 4 in South Los Angeles, 1 in East Los Angeles, a number of them in the San Fernando Valley. We have very good geographic coverage. Each one has an area of expertise. These are the organizations that can prepare a workforce, make sure that people are job ready, so that when an employer puts out a call, we can send them, they say they want 90 people who can do X, Y, Z, we can provide that for them. So it shouldn't be hard for any private sector employer in the city of Los Angeles to contact a work source center. We have it up on the website, and then say, call in your order, call in what you want, and we will provide it for you.
Sure. And we want to keep the one in the West San Fernando Valley that I know is...
Yeah. Well, we already bid it. You're good.
All right.
We're going into the work source centers now. I mean, the business source centers now.
Okay.
So that's the next thing that's out for our RFP.
Okay.
Mr. Weston? All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Perry and colleagues. And a number of the things that you spoke about, we're going to go into, as I said, in much greater length. But because our members have to leave, I would like to call for a vote, if I could, on Mr. Wesson's motion, which is before us. And this is on item number 3. This is a motion instructing the Chief Legislative Analyst, the City Administrative Officer, the Workforce Investment Board, the Economic Workforce Development Department, and other relevant city agencies to report with recommendations on a comprehensive job creation plan. This motion has also been referred to the Economic Development Committee, and Mr. Price moves and Mr. Blumenfield seconds. Is there any objection? Seeing none, that motion is approved. And any other questions, members, for any of our speakers before they leave? Any other discussion? Then I think is there any other action matter before the committee? All right. Well, members, just so you can plan ahead a little bit, our next meeting will deal with the status of economic development in Los Angeles. So we're going to be going into a lot more detail on some of these issues we've touched upon today. We'll then move into a discussion in October, later in October, of job growth in specific geographical areas and how we might be able to centralize and more focus our economic development functions that we already have in place. So looking forward to continuing to work with you all. With that, we are adjourned.